Professor McGonagall.
Get closer to that, Jonathan.
Hey, hold on.
He looks like Mrs. Bates goes to Hogwarts.
Wait, hold it steady.
And everyone said I had the best boobs out of all the guys in my school.
They real?
Now, if Jennifer and Deanna would join me, I have a song fic I wrote once upon a time.
I don't know the tune, I'm gonna make up my own.
Okay. It's titled Popular. Remus plopped down on his bed. Since he was a second year at Hogwarts, he wasn't very high up the social ladder. To be honest, the only one lower than him who wasn't a first year was probably Peter Pettigrew, who didn't seem like someone Remus would want to associate with. The fact that Remus came from a relatively poor family didn't help matters at all. His family couldn't afford the fancy robes or pets that everyone else seemed to have. Remus didn't usually mind so much, but he had just endured yet another party in celebration of his dorm mates James and Sirius. James and Sirius were exceedingly popular, since they were good-looking, very rich, and both excellent Quidditch players, having just won Gryffindor the Quidditch Cup. And while Remus was happy for his friends and for Gryffindor, he didn't think that was enough cause for a party in their honor to be held all night long, and he was sick of being the tag-along friend. As if on cue, James and Sirius entered the dorm room. Without any preamble, Sirius announced importantly,
Remus, what, singing or talking? Remus, now that we're friends, I've decided to make you my new project.
Remus looked at them anxiously. They both had eager looks on their faces, which Remus had come to identify with trouble. He had seen that look on their faces far too often when they were about to prank Severus Snape. Remus nervously replied, "You really don't have to do that." Sirius sat down next to Remus on the bed and put a comforting arm around Remus's shoulder. He said earnestly,
I know. That's what makes me so nice.
Remus swallowed nervously. He had no doubt that Sirius's intentions were magnanimous, but whether they would actually be beneficial to Remus was another issue altogether. Sirius continued, oblivious to Remus's doubts. This is singing.
Whenever I see someone less fortunate than I,
And let's face it, who isn't?
less fortunate than I, my tender heart tends to start to bleed.
And when someone needs a makeover,
I simply have to take over.
I know
Exactly what they need.
And even in your case,
Though it's the toughest case I've ever yet to face, don't worry. I'm determined to succeed. Follow my lead.
and yes, indeed, you
You'll be popular. You're gonna be popular.
They both looked at Remus eagerly, but he was more unnerved now than ever. The fact that James and Sirius were finishing each other's sentences, which was weird enough in itself, meant that they had obviously given a lot of thought to this, and that meant that they would make sure he didn't get out of it. Seeming to take Remus's silence for consent, Sirius eagerly exclaimed,
I'll teach you the proper poise when you talk to girls. Little ways to flirt and flounce.
and Sirius started demonstrating how to court a girl, with James acting the part of the girl. And while Sirius was certainly smooth in his movements as he picked up James's hand and kissed it, Remus was fairly sure that Sirius's perverted pickup lines wouldn't tickle the fancy of a real girl, and that no girl would giggle as shrilly as James did in his attempt to gain After the bizarre courtship ritual was finished, James eagerly exclaimed,
oh, I'll show you what shoes to wear.
How to fix your hair. Everything that really counts to be popular.
Now Remus stared in a kind of horrified stupor, as Sirius started rooting through Remus's wardrobe and deeming most of it unacceptable, while James messed up Remus's hair to look like his own, informing Remus that chicks dug it.
Dug it.
After he finished rifling through Remus's wardrobe and proclaimed most of it unsatisfactory, Sirius pityingly said to Remus,
I'll help you be popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts.
Sirius proudly indicated himself and James, while Remus was asking himself why on earth he chose these cohorts over someone normal. James interjected,
You'll be good at sports.
Remus had to actually admit that James had a point there. The Quidditch players were revered at Hogwarts. If it weren't for James's prodigious skill as a chaser on the Quidditch field, he wouldn't be anywhere near as popular as he was now. And though Sirius's incredibly good looks helped, Remus doubted that Sirius would be as popular as he was without being a beater on the Quidditch team. Meanwhile, Sirius kept listing the things he would teach Remus.
All the slang you've got to know.
So let's start.
Sirius nodded in agreement and stopped listing things, and they both said sadly,
Cause you've got an awfully long way to go.
Apparently, Sirius finally noticed Remus's less than ecstatic look because he said quickly,
Don't be offended by my frank analysis.
Think of it as personality dialysis.
Sirius sat down next to Remus and put his arm around the terrified team.
Now that I've chosen to become a pal, a brother, an advisor, there's nobody wiser, not when it comes to popular.
I know about
I know about popular. And with an assist from me to be who you'll be instead of dreary who you were.
Well, par.
Sirius whacked James in the head, mumbling about lack of sensitivity.
Oh, sorry.
Which Remus thought was a bit rich at this point, and continued as if there had been no interruption.
That means
Yeah.
there's nothing that can stop you from becoming popular.
Then, to Remus's intensified horror, James and Sirius began to sing.
La 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 la, we're gonna make you popular.
Then, to Remus's intense gratitude, they stopped singing, but Remus's relief was short-lived when Sirius began saying,
When I see depressing creatures with unprepossessing features, I remind them on their own behalf to think of celebrated heads of state.
Especially great communicators. Did they have brains or knowledge?
Don't make me laugh.
They were popular. It's all about popular.
It's not about aptitude,
It's the way you viewed.
so it's very shrewd to be very, very popular like me.
All this time, James and Sirius had been correcting little things about Remus's appearance. A loosened collar, an untucked shirt, rolled up sleeves, and so on. When they were finally done, and Remus was at wit's end, Sirius said teasingly,
Why, Mr. Lupin, look at you. You're...
Remus was at the end of his rope. He finally found the voice he had lost 20 minutes ago and started, I have to go. James and Sirius looked at him startled, but he was already on his way down to the common room. He'd brave any party rather than continue with James and Sirius's popularity 411. He heard James and Sirius call out as he descended.
You're welcome!
Remus shook his head and decided to inquire as to just how much alcohol was in the butterbeer at the party.
Not enough.
He heard James and Sirius break out into song again upstairs.
And though you protest your disinterest, I know clandestinely you're gonna grin and bear it. Your newfound popularity. La 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 la, you'll be popular, just not as popular as me.
How about 20 more of these?